Welcome to this special presentation, an extended interview with the legendary Limerick actor Richard Harris, as he shares his candid thoughts on fellow Limerickman Frank McCourt, the author of the controversial book Angela's Ashes, 1996, and Alan Parker's acclaimed 1999 film adaptation. In this rare and unfiltered conversation, Harris delves deep into his views, feelings, and opinions on McCourt's portrayal of their shared hometown, a story that ignited debates both within Limerick and far beyond. Originally broadcast live on Radio Limerick 1, this interview was conducted by late-night talk show host, historian, and journalist Jerry HANNAN. To preserve the authenticity of this momentous exchange, the recording has been left unedited, allowing you to hear the interview exactly as it aired. For your listening pleasure, the sound quality has been carefully enhanced. To enrich the visual experience, this documentary combines authentic archival photographs with AI-generated imagery, marked clearly at the bottom right corner of the screen for transparency. These visuals aim to immerse you in the world and themes of this unforgettable dialogue, bringing Harris's reflections and the context of Angela's Ashes to life. Prepare to step back in time and witness this iconic interview, a conversation that continues to resonate, shedding light on the legacy of two towering figures from Limerick and their complex relationship with the city that shaped them both.
My reaction is, my reaction is simple. I knew him well. I knew Frank. Of course, I knew Malachi very, very well. And without dwelling too much about the sort of demerits of the book.
Okay.
Which I find Frank McCourt, even without my coming out and attacking the book, of course, he parried that by saying, well, Richard Harris came from a different part of Limerick than I did. How would he know how we lived? But he was well versed in telling the press how well I lived. So my remark was, well, if he's so well informed about my life, why is it unnecessary for me not to be well informed about his life and the type of life he lived? But the point was that I knew Frank fairly well, and I found him to be probably the ugliest and the most bitter human being I think I have ever met in my entire life.
As a child, now you're saying?
No, I knew him when I was in America up to, say, 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know him in Limerick at all. I didn't even know Malachi in Limerick.
Where did you first meet Frank McCourt?
Well, I met Frank McCourt with Malachi in New York. And he was very sort of derogative about Limerick and so forth, and derisive about Limerick. And I was having an argument in Malachi's pub called Himself. Naturally, of course, Malachi McCourt would call his pub Himself. What else? As a typical Irish American, he would call it Himself. And I was having a discussion with Malachi about Limerick and Frank. And as I was talking to Malachi, Frank drew off and hit me a terrible belt in the nose. And like a greyhound, or like a hare running from a hound, he raced towards the exit door and ran out of the pub. And I said to Malachi, I'm afraid your brother is not really a Limerick man. And Malachi said, why not? I said, because I've never yet been confronted by a Limerick man who ran away from a fight. We don't do that in Limerick. We stand our ground and we fight. I said, your brother has just hit me in the nose and he ran. So I said, that is not the character of the Limerick people at all. I found him, I knew Malachi for years, and Malachi wrote a book called A Monk Swimming.
That's right.
Which I am right through the book. He dedicates the book. I'm one of the people he dedicates the book to, right?
Okay.
But I kind of found that Malachi, and I was quite fond of Malachi up to a point, but I kind of found them absolute users. They would use you. They were using me and my position in America for them to gain some kind of notoriety and that. And I found I suppose I can best characterize them both as users. They used people to advance themselves. And the sort of tragedy here is that, you know, that I knew Angela, by the way.
You knew Angela?
Oh, I did, yeah.
How did you know Angela?
Well, I used to visit. When I was in America and I'd meet Malachi, himself and Frank and I would go and meet the mother. And I spent time with the mother, and they used to bring the mother sort of crates of beer and cigarettes, and they treated her so badly. And one day in Malachi's pub, I really got very angry the way they spoke about the mother, and their sort of obviously sort of disdain for the mother and the hatred of the mother. And I got very, very angry. And I remember sort of grabbing Malachi by the neck and saying, you know, this is your mother. You cannot treat her like this. You're bringing her, if she's dying, you're bringing her cigarettes. Oh, yes, they said, we're bringing her cigarettes, we're bringing her lots of beer, hoping she'll die. Because she's costing us money, because they had to pay the rent. This is your mother. You can't behave like that. But however, to go back to, that's all incidental regarding the book and so forth. What I found about the book is there are two wonderful...
When you met Angela,
yeah,
what was she like?
She was kind of in her old age, and she was very, very quiet. And I remember when they both left the room and left me alone with her, and Angela said, you know, they don't like me, they don't treat me well. They don't treat me well, they don't want me to be here. I'm a nuisance to them. I'm a sort of a rock around their neck. They wish I was gone.
Good.
I was kind of holding her hand saying, you know, that's not true, you're trying to sort of pacify her in a strange way. But I kind of found it very, very odd. But you know that the thing here is that you asked me about, you mentioned earlier about Limerick, and you said about, you know, what was missing. What did Frank McCourt miss out of Limerick? It is terribly obvious what he missed out of Limerick. You probably know that I'm a lifetime member of the Young Monsters Rugby Club.
That's right.
Which is the working class rugby club in Limerick. And I'm a lifetime member there. And they were all my friends. At the same period that Malachi McCourt was in Limerick and Frank McCourt was in Limerick, these were my mates. And when I had tuberculosis, for instance, you know, they were the people who, legions of them, used to come, when I was lying up in bed, legions of these guys used to come up and see me in bed. Now, their background is identical to Malachi McCourt's. They came from that area, the Young Monsters Club came from that area, and they had this almost an indestructible loyalty towards Limerick. And I can tell you that a lot of the people in the Young Monsters team that I played against, I'm going back now to the late 40s, early 50s, that I played against, came from the same area as Malachi and Frank and the McCourts, and they had just as tough a time. But you never heard from them one condemnation about Limerick. You never heard one utterance of disloyalty about Limerick. And I found that that's a quality that Frank never inherited somehow in Limerick, was this passion they have for each other. I go back to Limerick, for God's sake, and they'll attack me, and they'll make fun of me, and they'll pass jokes about me. But God help if someone from Dublin did, or someone from London did, in their presence, they'd kill them.
That's right.
And that kind of loyalty, they never had it. He didn't have it. Malachi didn't have it. Malachi, I'll tell you about Malachi. When Malachi played rugby around the same, in fact, he played against me when I played for Old Crescent. Malachi didn't play with his people. He didn't play with Young Monsters. He didn't play with St. Mary's. He didn't play with Presentation, which were the clubs based around his area. He played for Bohemians. And Bohemians in those days were the snobbiest, the most right-wing, snobbiest club in Limerick. And Malachi elected not to play with his own class, but to upgrade himself into the Bohemian side and play for Bohemians, which I kind of found to be exceedingly amusing. And I said to Malachi one day in New York, I said, well, you're always trying to upgrade yourself. I said, you always had ambitions beyond your station. I said, excuse me. I'm coughing because I got this terrible flu.
Oh, you've got it.
I'm just getting over the flu. And the thing that really upsets me, why I called you, was because Parker has come out in the past 2 days here in a wealth of very bad publicity about Limerick. Saying Limerick was backward, they were uneducated, that they got no cooperation whatsoever in Limerick, and it was bigotry, Catholic Church bigotry, and so forth, etc.
Which confirms the feeling that the people of Limerick have toward the book.
Well, I'll tell you, interestingly enough. So I've had the Sunday Times, the London Sunday Times, the London Daily Telegraph, the Daily Express, and the Daily Mail have been calling me to say, do you want to respond to it? And I said, well, look, if I respond in an interview, you'll either misquote me or you won't quote the things that you find to be sort of dangerously offensive. But if you want me to answer it, and answer Parker in particular, I will do that by writing an article that you can't edit. And they've all four
Good
newspapers.
man, Richard. Good man.
And all 4 newspapers have agreed to do that.
Oh, good man, Richard.
So I'm doing it as I'm sitting here all day. I'm writing the article, and I kind of find that there were certain questions that I discovered because I made a lot of investigations over the past 48 hours, and I found out that this is. I think they knew, Paramount, whoever produced the movie, knew this picture wasn't going to make it.
Did they?
Yeah.
How would they know that, Richard?
Well, they know it. They've screened it. I mean, they've screened it. They've test screened it already. And they test screen it with an audience. And they test screen it in New York. They test screen it in Schenectady. They test screen it in Phoenix, Arizona. They test screen it to see what the public reaction is. And the public reaction has been very bad to it, very poor. And so they know they're into a £20 million loss here. So they're drumming up as much bad publicity as they can to get people to come to the movie. And what they've done is they've picked Limerick as the whipping boy, in which they can stir up. I've made 63 movies. I know exactly what they're doing. I know exactly what they're all about. Alan Parker hasn't directed a good movie in 6 or 7 or 8 years. He destroyed Evita, which went down the tube for nearly $100 million. And this is his chance he hoped to make a success because the book was so successful. He hoped to ride on the coattails of the book. Of the book. When he found out on screening tests that the movie, he ain't going to make it. He's not going to make it. I can tell you that. He's not going to make it. So what they did was they tried in their PR and their publicity machine, headed by Parker, to create this huge controversy about Limerick and the Catholic Church and the people in Limerick hating the movie and hoping that will create press. Now, they have asked me weeks ago to come out, and I said, no, I'm not going to go out, because if I come out and give interviews for you, all I'm doing is publicizing your picture. I'm not going to do that. Until yesterday, when Parker came out and singled out Limerick, about the prejudice in Limerick, the lack of education in Limerick. He even made the most stupid comment I ever heard in my life. He said, they're so backward in Limerick, they haven't even got the EastEnders. Can you imagine a man of culture making a remark that Limerick has no culture because they don't show the EastEnders? I mean, the man must have been mad to have said it. And it's on today's Daily Express.
Good God.
So I said, okay, now it's my chance. I should defend my city.
Good man, Richard.
I am the man who should defend it. I love Limerick. I'm loyal to Limerick. And I think Limerick, although we have our bouts of hate and love, I said, however, that this is totally untrue what you're saying about Limerick, and I intend to defend it now. Not so much the McCourt book. I'll attack the McCourt book. If anybody wants to come down and ask me to write about that, I can write about that. But you know much more about it than I do. But certainly attacking what Parker has the sort of portfolio that Parker has given himself to try and create publicity for this movie. And I saw the movie today, by the way.
You saw it today.
Oh, I saw it today, yeah.
What was your reaction?
Well, my reaction is very, very simple. You know, I think that if it's up for an Oscar, it'll get Oscar for special rain effects. The movie is 2.5 hours of rain. And if it should be considered for an Oscar, and it must have cost him a fortune in water. That's the only thing of merit in the film at all. And I think what he has done also, which I should say in my interview, is that what he has taken 1930 or 1940 Limerick, and he has dated it back to the sort of late 19th century in the time of Dickens. It's more Dickens and more Dickensian in its squalor, right, than it is, accurately Limerick. And I kind of feel that somehow that, that if Limerick had... Listen here, if there's so much rain fell in Limerick, we'd be famous for our water polo teams, not our rugby teams.
Oh, lovely.
But I'll tell you a story as well about them. Now, this story is a fact.
Water polo, I love it.
When Angela died, she wanted to be buried in Limerick. All right? Now, I happen to know the person whose name I won't mention over television, but if I'm forced to do so, I shall do so, is that there is an Irish travel agency in New York who Malachy and Frank went to book their tickets and to take the coffin back to Limerick. But Malachy and Frank refused to pay the extra charge for the coffin, right?
Jesus.
So they were to book themselves back to Limerick, okay, on cheap flights by this man, who I know very well, who told me the story. But they refused to pay for the coffin, the cargo for the coffin. So what they did was, they decided to cremate her, where they could put the ashes into their overnight handbags and take her back for nothing, because they refused. Because at that particular stage, she was a very devout Catholic. And at that particular stage, it was frowned upon to be cremated, even by the Catholic Church. And that was an issue that she couldn't countenance at all. She wanted to be buried.
She wanted to be buried.
To be buried, but they wouldn't pay for the coffin, so they cremated her and put her into a tin. Now, when they got to the airport in New York, may I tell you, Frank turned to Malachy and said, "Have you got her?" And Malachy says, "Got who?" "Have you got her or not?" He says, "Got who?" He says, "Ma." He says, "I haven't got Ma. You've got Ma." He said, "I haven't got Ma. I gave her to you in the tin."
Good God.
And they just searched their bags, and they found that in this little tin, or this urn, was the mother, which none of them at that particular time, well, I won't say knew, because one of them, they obviously knew that they had her, but they both into a row as to who had her, right? They just searched their handbags and found there she was, right? Now, Frank McCourt and Malachy McCourt were booked on 2 different flights because they couldn't get the cheap flights, and they found one cheap flight on Aer Lingus or something. He's flying to Shannon, and the other one was on, I think, some Icelandic airline, and Malachy took that. And Malachy was put in charge of the mother in the tin, the mother's ashes. So Frank took off for Shannon. Malachy took off in his polo route, I think in Icelandic Airlines, and the Icelandic aeroplane got into trouble, engine trouble, and had to go back to New York. So it went back to New York, dropping Malachy back in New York, in the place in which he attended to, regardless of whether it's true or not. You were totally moved by this sort of dreadful deprivation they went through, and you kind of moved by. But there's no literary merit to it at all. At all. And to answer your question, I was talking to Brian Free, and I said, well, how is that successful? Because at this particular moment, say over the past 2 or 3 years in America, being Irish is terribly fashionable. It's a great thing to be Irish. Everything that comes out of Ireland has to be successful. We had a couple of plays by Martin McDonagh. One was called The Cripple of Inishmaan. The other was called The Beauty Queen of Leenane. Really minor works, upheld here in America as the work another Irish genius has emerged on our theatrical landscape. And the plays are absolutely without any merit. Because being Irish at the moment is absolutely fashionable and the thing to be. But as Brian Friel said, if we keep on, if that sort of momentum is continued, it won't be long, you know. The Angela's Ashes of this world will deplete that opinion about Ireland very quickly.
Good God. What's the feeling in New York about this book?
I haven't been.
You haven't been?
I've been there, but I haven't been around that circle at all. I went to New York, and then I went down to the Bahamas, to my home in the Bahamas.
Okay.
But obviously it's huge. It's huge. I mean, I don't know how many millions and millions of copies it sold. It's huge. Because people have bought into it.
Let's talk about Alan Parker. How is he rated as a director in Hollywood now?
Well, Parker...
And how have you heard
of it? Younger.
How did he wind up directing Angela's Ashes? How did that come
I guess it's a #1 book. It sold so many copies. The studio bought it, and maybe he wanted to do it.
And
because, you know, Hollywood is bereft of material at the moment. They're all... I mean, the movies they made in Hollywood now are all remakes of movies that were successful in the 1950s and 60s and 40s. They're bereft of ideas. This book has gone through the roof. It's an enormous success. And the studio thought in Hollywood, well, look, this is a big success. Maybe it'll be... And maybe those who bought the book will go to the movie. If the people who bought the book go to the movie, we're in profit. And they got Parker to do it. Parker directed some very good movies in his young days.
Midnight Express.
Oh, yes. You know, but of latter years, his movies are dreadful. I mean, Evita was just dreadful. And Evita was one long, a 3-hour MTV commercial.
Yeah.
And then he did the Mississippi Burning,
yeah,
with Hackman, and that was awful. Didn't know what he was doing. Didn't know the terrain or the area at all.
Who should have directed Angela's Ashes, do you think?
Well, it should have been an Irishman.
Neil Jordan?
Neil Jordan's a wonderful director, and he's got this wonderful movie out now. The Graham Greene movie, The End of the Affair here. It's absolutely beautiful. He's a wonderful director. You know, he's a director that when he hits it right, it's brilliant. He can miss, like everybody else can miss. He can miss, but when he's great, when he's good, he's great. He could have done it. Jim Sheridan could have done it.
Jim Sheridan.
Yeah, could have done it. A lot of people could have done it.
Had
they wanted to do it.
Had you been approached anywhere along the line?
Oh, no, not at all. No, the McCourts wouldn't have me anywhere near them because I haven't spoken to Frank or Malachi for 2.5, 3 years. I got fed up with being used by them.
There was rumours knocking around Limerick for a while there that you were going to play the headmaster.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No truth at all.
No truth at all. No truth at all in it.
Well, those rumours surfaced after from one of Frank McCourt's visits to the city. So maybe he was throwing your name in the hat for a publicity stunt, you know?
Well, I'm used to them doing that to me. Yeah.
So how's your life doing now?
Very well.
You have a bad bout of the flu.
I got a terrible flu. You can hear my voice.
Yeah.
Oh, croaky. I got the flu. I got the flu in Dublin, believe it or not. I went up there for the millennium. And I got a bad dose of the flu, and I've been in bed since. I'm just sort of recovering from it now.
Oh, there was devastation at the match last weekend that you weren't there.
I was supposed to be there. I was looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I was looking very forward to it.
Do you get to see the matches? Has anyone videotaped them for you?
They have done it, but I haven't got it yet. Yeah, they did it for me, and I haven't got it yet. I was looking for it because I was asked to speak at the dinner, the after-dinner thing, or the luncheon or whatever.
That's right.
I'd done this big speech.
But you know we put them out all over Europe now on television, don't you?
Which?
All the matches.
We don't get them at all in England.
Well, they're on the Hotbird satellite system.
Oh, yeah, we don't get it at all here.
You don't, unfortunately.
No, not at all.
But sure, you might have a few shekels to spare and buy yourself a dish. You'll get to see even the small local matches, they're all going to come.
How much I can? I'm in the Savoy Hotel when I'm in London, and they won't put a dish in.
Do you think, there's a lady rang here, Richard, and she said that she remembers vividly the lanes of Limerick and the whole lot. And she says that Harris Mills, I mean, was tremendous in its... contribution, if you like, to the community.
Sure. My
at the
grandfather,
time.
or Richard Harris, he died in 1932.
Yeah.
He died 2 years after I was born, Richard Harris. Sure, he used to... I mean, one of the reasons he lost half his money was he used to employ people from the lanes that he didn't even need. He overstaffed and for the sake of giving something and giving back. And my mother and my dead sister, Audrey, were great stalwarts in helping people with money and food and meals and so forth, clothes and all that.
Did you ever walk through the lanes of Limerick?
Years ago.
Do you remember them well?
I do. Years and years ago.
Were you up to your knees in water when you were
Not
walking?
at all. Not at all.
How did the houses look up there, Richard?
Well, you could see that. You could see it was, a deprived area. I mean, when we used to go up to Priory Park to play rugby in Priory Park, by the station.
Yeah.
I often went down by the lanes there, and people were kicking football and playing and happy and singing and doing hopscotch and so forth. And, I mean, it'd be easier for me to say they were all very, very happy when I came from a very, very comfortable house. Well-fed house and that.
Did you have friends from the lanes of Limerick? Did you know anyone from the lanes?
The only people that I knew very close were all the young Munsters people. All the young Munsters people. I knew them very, very well. John Joe Horrigan I knew very, very well. I knew Willie Allen very, very well. Willie Allen, Lexi Clancy, John Joe Horrigan, and of course his brother Christy Horrigan. I knew all these people very, very well. And their lives were just as tough. Their lives were just as tough. But they never cribbed. They never complained. And you asked them tomorrow, would they stand up and fight for Limerick? Yes.
Yes.
They'd be in the front line. McCourt would be running for the exit, as he did when he hit me in the mouth, on the nose. He ran quick to the exit. That's what I said. He's not a Limerick man. Limerick men don't run away from a fight. They stand and fight.
Is it fair to say, there's lots of calls and messages coming in, we'll get to those in just a moment. Is it fair to say, Richard, that he's just a perpetual moaner?
Well, I think, with Jesus Christ, I mean, the movie is 2.5 hour moan, and the book was one long moan, and Tiz is even worse. Did you read Tiz?
It is.
Jesus Christ. It's another moan. It's one big, long, perpetual moan. Perpetual, feel sorry for me. Love me because nobody else does. Please feel sorry for me. Look what happened to me. But he was like that as a person, too.
Was he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very much like
Looking
that.
for sympathy.
Yeah.
God, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that what he's doing here? Is he just looking for love?
He may look for it. I don't know if he can... I doubt very much if he finds it that he can reciprocate. I don't think it's in him. It's too late for him to reciprocate. I don't think he can give anything back. Not when you treat your mother like that in the book and the other people you just mentioned, when you can tarnish their names and their reputations like that without, for the sake of making a buck. To hell with it. To hell with it. And I don't think it would. And I don't think that all the money he has will fill that hollow in his life. That to be a terrible hollow in his life. So listen on you and I, more stupid to be sitting here talking about it.
I know, because I can tell you there's thousands of people making contact with the station at the moment, and we'll be giving those messages in a little while. What are you doing anyway? What's the next movie?
Nothing at the moment. I am at the moment gladly out of work.
When you in the last few years, as this book was achieving the international success that it achieved, and that, when you first read the book, Richard, did you anticipate that it would be the big bestseller it was going to be?
Well, I did not. I must tell you, I knew that the word in New York was very big on it, particularly when the New York Times did some excerpts of it, and that I knew that's the biggest kickoff that a book can really get. To get something like that is worth millions of dollars in publicity. So I knew that he had a chance. Then I read it, and I sort of, I could see through it. And I could see through it more than anybody else, because I knew Frank.
Yeah.
With every line I read, I could hear Frank's bitterness in the lines coming out. And
so is it true to say then, would you say, that this book does not in any way capture the spirit of Limerick, and therefore nor does the movie?
Well, the movie, the movie doesn't capture the spirit of the book for a start. And whatever merits the book has, the movie is not at all, in my view. Does the book capture the spirit of Limerick? I think what he is, I think the mere fact in the writing of it, his intentions, his total intentions in writing the book are not within the spirit of Limerick at all. Did you ever read? There are two wonderful books that I read in the past couple of months. One is called A Spot So Fair by a fellow called O'Shaughnessy in Limerick.
You read A Spot So Fair, did you?
I did. And I also read The Pig Buyer and the Pope.
Dennis, yeah.
Yeah.
Talking to me yesterday, those books are hugely successful.
Well, no, that's the spirit of Limerick. There's the true spirit of Limerick, where there was communities. You see, there was the communities that helped out each other. And here's when I find a question that I'd like McCourt to answer.
Are they superior to Angela's Ashes?
Oh, I think they're more interesting. And if you want to know about Limerick, read those two books, not Angela's Ashes. And I tell you something very interesting, actually, is this.
Yeah.
I was talking last night to Stephen Ray.
Yes.
The actor, he's a wonderful actor.
Great actor.
Yeah, we're talking about Angela's Ashes and that and so forth, and he hated the book. Absolutely hated the book. Now, he's not even from Limerick. He's in the north of Ireland. He hated the book. And he hated the movie. He'd seen the movie. He hated the movie. But we're talking about Limerick, and I said, that having read these two books, Spot So Fair and The Pig Buyer and the Pope, it was quite clear that there was a community in Limerick that helped each other out. If one family didn't have it, they didn't have meals, they didn't have this and that, the neighbours came up and helped them out. The neighbours helped them out. There was such a there was such a camaraderie there. There was such a community of loyalty, helping each other. And this is also what Stephen Ray said to me last night. He said, where I came from was also very poor areas in the north. And he said, but everybody helped each other out. There was a community that actually fed off and fed to the people who were in a period of bad luck. They helped each other out. Everybody helped each other out. But it appeared from Frank McCourt that nobody would help them out. Why? Ask yourself why. What did they do that ostracized themselves from their neighbours who choose to ignore them? What did they do?
Good question.
Yeah, where according to, Melick out of Frank's book, nobody helped them out. Nobody gave them a thing. Well, this is not at all true in Limerick. Read those two books. The community level in those two books, they stood by each other. They helped each other out. If somebody fell in hard times, somebody gave them a shilling or 2 shillings extra. They made them the tea and they gave them this and so forth. They gave them, they helped each other. What? And according to Frank, nobody helped them out. The question is, why didn't they? Why were they excluded? Why were they picked out to be ignored? There has to be a reason. And I won't venture what the reason is, but there has to be a reason.
Have you ever contemplated what that reason might be?
No, I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe they were obnoxious. Maybe they were rude to people. I don't understand. Maybe the father... I mean, this whole idea, by the way, which let's put one thing to rest. What McCourt maintained, that the reason they were so deprived in Limerick was because the father was a Protestant from Northern Ireland. Couldn't get a job. Now, you know that is absolutely untrue.
Crap.
I'll tell you why it's untrue. Logically, it's untrue. All the big businesses in Limerick were Protestant. Ranks were Protestant, right?
Oh, of course.
All the big businesses in Limerick at that period were all Protestant. And a Protestant worker could leapfrog the queue and get a job before a Catholic. So there could have been no reason whatsoever why he could not get work. Being a Protestant, with all those big firms in Limerick, but were all Protestant firms, they helped their own first before they helped the Catholic. And the mere fact that his father probably got a job and couldn't hold it, don't blame Limerick for that. Because the father was a drunk. Don't blame Limerick for that.
Protestant could leapfrog.
He could leapfrog a queue, the work queue. He gets the top of the queue. For a Catholic, he'd be employed before a Catholic, in ranks in those days. I ought to know it because my father had to deal with ranks, and my father had to deal with ranks.
So you got in there a lot faster if you were Protestant.
You got into the top of the queue. You went straight to the top of the queue. So it's rubbish.
That's a very profound observation. That has never. That's a point that has never been brought up even on this program and all the calls we've had. Yeah, amazing. Do you think that? How would you? I know it's pure speculation, but you must have heard on the grapevine. Is he himself still happy with the book, or
who?
McCourt. Have you heard anything?
Well, he must have made about $10 or $15 million. Why wouldn't he be happy with it?
Yeah.
He got $1 million for the rights of the picture.
Wonder, does he feel any remorse at all about it?
Not at all, I don't think so. I don't think he's... I genuinely don't feel, knowing him, that he has an emotional bone in his body, except hate. And that's too deeply embedded for him to change.
It's gone too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not at all. He's no regrets whatsoever. His only regret would be that Tiz isn't as big a success as Angela's Ashes. Maybe his only regret. That it wasn't as big a success.
So would you say, in your own childhood, Richard, what was your neighbourhood like? Well, the rich people of Limerick.
Well, my family, my great-grandfather was very rich. My grandfather was very rich. Jesus, they owned so much mills, and they had boats. They owned their own boats. They went up the Shannon, delivering meal and grain and things like that. But in my youth, everything began to collapse. We had a reputation of having money, but we had none. We had enough. We lived well. We lived very well. In the Ennis Road at that time, it was a very privileged area, and we lived well. I have no intention of hiding that, or sidestepping that issue, except that we had a reputation of being very wealthy, and we weren't very wealthy. So my father went broke in 1960, and the family went bankrupt.
So you experienced a level of poverty as well?
Well, you can't say that. I can't say that. I mean, I know that at one time we had our own chauffeurs, and we had our own governesses, and upstairs and maids, and downstairs maids, and our own gardener. I mean, Tom Clifford's father was our gardener. The great Musty Clifford was our gardener. But I remember at the end of it, my mother down on the floor scrubbing the floors. The money was all gone. They couldn't afford it anymore.
How did that affect you?
Well, I suppose it didn't really, because we were so young at the time. Really didn't. I suppose we thought I suppose we're very young and innocent, and we thought that's the way life was. I don't remember really the rich days. I don't remember, because my grandfather died when I was 2. And so, and I don't remember those days at all. I don't remember the days when I didn't benefit, shall I say, from the excessive wealth they had. I was a part of it when the whole thing was diminishing and collapsing. But it doesn't matter. I mean, that's life. And there we are.
That's life.
I can't say that I cannot. It would be very foolish, foolhardy of me to compare my life to the McCourt's life and people in the lanes and that.
Will this film get Oscars?
No. I told you it will. It's been nominated for the best special effects for so much rain. It rains the entire movie. It's 2.5 hours of rain. As I said to you already, I said that if there's so much rain fell in Limerick, we'd be famous for our water polo team rather than a rugby team.
Emily Watson, does she do a good job at all? Or?
There's some good performances. The little boy is very good. She's good in it, yeah. She's good. She's nothing like the mother.
No.
Because I knew the mother in her older days when she was old and overweight and grey and so forth, so I don't know what she was like when she was younger.
Oh, she was overweight all her life.
But they get nowhere. It doesn't develop. It gets nowhere. It's every scene is predictable. You know what the next scene is going to be. You know what the next scene is going to be. And he's no measure of what I call rhythm in the film. By the time he gets to the crucial sort of depressing elements of it, you had so much in the first 25 minutes that the last you know, of the first 45 minutes, that the next hour and a half doesn't bother you. As someone said to me here, my agent's secretary said to me that she read the book and she cried all the way through it. And she went to see the movie and not a tear. Totally devoid of emotion. You don't really care about them.
You find you don't care about them?
No, not at all. With all his doom and gloom and his rain and his squalor and the whole history, which was some of it that was told, you don't feel anything for them at all.
He's starting to distance himself a bit from it now, isn't he? The word is in the American media that he's starting to distance himself a bit from the movie now.
Frank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, his absence was very noticeable in a number of the premieres and that, you know. I've kept you talking for 2 hours.
Jesus Christ, you dirty fuck. This is my life. This is life.
We're live on the airways, worldwide on the internet.
Am I that terrible?
Sure, what the hell? What the hell?
I hope that this interview doesn't preempt my article now.